morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this podcast. This podcast series we call Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. And it started about 1 week after the murder of George Floyd. And we've continued on up until this time. And this will be the first podcast for 2026. But I invite you to go back to our archives and explore, look at all of the recorded podcasts that we have in the series and just get caught up. But today I am pleased, I am honored to have in this space Councilmember Caity Maple.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here again. My second time now.
Is it the second? I was thinking, is it the second or the third? So it's the second time.
I think it's the second.
Second. Oh, we've got to rectify that.
We do.
But definitely before, you were elected first to District 5 in 2022. And now you've announced and are running for re-election in 2026. So we have to have you definitely at least one more time before November, if not multiple times. How's it been? I mean, was being a council member what you thought it was going to be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yes and no. That's a very political answer, I guess. Maybe I'm getting good at this. No, but really, I think I knew a little bit about it because I was always involved. So I would show up to city council meetings. I would advocate on issues that were important to me. I would talk to my council members. And I had a mentor, our now Senator Angelique Ashby, then council member, who helped guide me over the years too. So I knew a little bit about what it was, what the job was, what it entailed. But there's also certain things that you just cannot understand until you do them. And this is one of those jobs. You cannot understand what it feels like, what the challenges are, the pains and the positives and the joys until you're really in it and experiencing it. And that's something that's been kind of surprising and interesting, that just trying to balance everything, trying to understand all the policy issues, really understand the constituents and people's fears and concerns and hopes and dreams, and then try to incorporate that all together is a lot harder than it looks.
Well, I think to borrow from former Speaker Willie Brown, his admonition or advice to someone was learn to count to 5. So counting to 5, but also being the council member, the representative voice for District 5. I'm sure that hasn't always been in the same swim lane, that what you would like for District 5 may not have been what the other districts were wanting. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's certainly, you have to balance that, right? Because 99% of most of the issues that I vote on any given week are citywide, right? So I'm a representative of my district, of course, and I take that with me every day, but I'm also a representative of the city and what is good for the city writ large. And sometimes those things can be in conflict, right? What's good for District 7, one of the wealthiest and more resourced districts in the city. It's beautiful. That's where you have William Land Park and Curtis Park and some of these gorgeous, the Pocket.
But also CV Circle and New Helvetia.
Correct, yes. And every district has both, challenged parts and more resource parts, to be fair. But by and large, the district is primarily well-resourced. We'll have different considerations and different values and things that they really care about than maybe some of the more challenged districts like mine and District 2, which is North Sacramento, Del Paso Heights, and those areas. There's different priorities and needs. And so sometimes those are in conflict, sometimes those are not. You have to count your votes, for sure. But I also try to use my voice to fight for equity. That's especially on the budget, but also other policy issues where it's not just about every council district getting the same resources. That wouldn't be equitable. But how do we focus the resources on the places that need it the most? And sometimes that can be a battle because every council member is fighting for their district.
I don't know why.
They all want the resources.
You might be able to relate to this, but I'm thinking of that game that I don't know if they still make it, Hungry Hippos.
Yes.
And so you'd have a whole bunch of marbles in the center, and you have these hippos, 4, not 9, districts vying for the marbles. Is that what it's like?
Yeah, sometimes. Not for everything, but when you think about a budget, right? It's a pie. It's a finite resource. You have X number of dollars, and those dollars need to be spent in a certain way. And there are always winners and losers. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of how our budgets work and our resources. And so, yes, to some degree, we're fighting for resources or making sure that we are taking care of our districts. However, I will say that a lot of our council members care a lot about the communities that they know have been left behind. And I think that that's been kind of maybe at least a more vocal market change in the last few years than 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, where you have council members that represent like North of Thomas, for example, and they will make statements from the dais and say, you know what, as much as I want these resources for my own community, I think we should go to Del Paso Heights because I know that they really need it. And I think that shows that there's more of an acceptance and an understanding about the resources and who needs it the most.
That is awesome. I hope that is something that happens more often than not, but maybe I'm just a hopeless optimist in that way. Okay, so over the arc of the last 3 years, this is your 4th year, you've had to have experienced some wonderful highs and some disappointing lows. Paint me a picture of some of the highs and some of the, boy, we need to run up this hill again.
Yeah. I think the highs, I will say, is hearing from the community that there's a problem. At my core, the thing I love the most about my job is that I'm a problem solver every single day.
Oh, I've got plenty of problems. I got plenty of problems, Councilmember. I'm just
good. Bring them on. Everything from trash cans and I'm mad about my street light and my sidewalk or whatever, to like really big ones like homelessness and housing and things that are more complex and are going to take time. I love spending time thinking about those things and trying to figure out the pieces and move them in such a way that we can actually solve people's problems. Mm-hmm. Huge thing for me. And so the tangible things, when you can see something through from problem has been identified to working on the solution, bring in all the partners to something being actually done about it and people feeling relief, that is just one of the highest highs I can feel. And so a great example of that would be right here on MLK and Broadway. If you recall, before I was in office, there were several car accidents at that intersection where people were speeding and running off, and they ran into the St. Hope building multiple times. And I think there were 8 crashes in the span of a couple of years, and 2 people died. It was really a very urgent situation, and people were frustrated. Mm-hmm. And they reached out to my office, and I was brand new. I didn't even know where the coffee maker was yet. And they were just like, what are you going to do about this? How many more people need to die before, we are going to do something? And so I was like, you're right. And I called our public works department. I called a big meeting with all the community members and our city staff. And I said, what are we going to do about this? And what's really challenging sometimes about working in city government or any government is the bureaucracy. I don't blame any one person. There's a lot of people who care a lot, but the bureaucracy is really strong. And so the first answer was like, oh, we can't do that because we don't have money. And we can't do that because it doesn't make sense. And we've got to get engineers. And you need someone like me to go in and our community members to like push and say, no, this is really, and that's what we did. And we pushed until we got them to say yes. And it was, thinking outside the box and doing what's called a quick build, where we narrowed down the lanes using more temporary-ish solutions because the long-term ones were really expensive and are going to take years for us to get the pieces together. Narrowing the lanes with bollards and slowing down when people come into the turn and going out. And guess what? There hasn't been a single death or major accident there since I've been in office. And so that's like one thing where I'm like, I can look at that every day. I can drive down Broadway and I'd say, we did that. It's not huge, but it matters.
It is huge. It's absolutely huge. But hopefully that's indicative of what can be done on a larger scale.
So that led to me advocating for what's called our quick build program. So again, we're in a budget deficit, so we don't have a lot of money at the city. I get told no every time I try to request any kind of funding for anything because we don't have the money. And so it requires a lot of creativity. So that idea led to, well, what if we did a program citywide? What if we could identify all of these intersections that are major problems, because of course it's not the only one, where there's accidents and deaths and injuries, and we could do shorter term, more inexpensive, quick solutions. And so I worked with our public works department to identify $6 million in their budget that they could reallocate so we didn't have to come up with new money towards this program. We got it passed last year, and now it's in motion. And now there's multiple intersections all throughout the city that these are going up, and it's saving lives. So that was like, okay, I've got one solution, one small scale to something bigger, and using funding that we already had. And so that's something I'm really, really proud of. I would say that's one of the highs, is that program.
So what about some of the, this didn't turn out the way I had hoped. Let's try this again in either year 4 or the next 4 years?
Yeah, I have a few. I would have a few of those where I had policies that were introduced that I wasn't able to get across the finish line or experienced some challenges. One is, again, on the same kind of topic, I introduced a pedestrian state of emergency declaration of the city, where an acknowledgement that we have a problem here. We're one of the most unsafe cities in the United States of America for pedestrians and cyclists. People do not feel safe walking their kids to school, riding their bikes, crossing the road, and that's a problem. And we have what's called Vision Zero, where we passed this policy back in 2017, before my time on the council, saying we were going to, work towards zero deaths, zero injuries. Guess what? We're going the opposite direction. We're seeing increases. We're seeing that yes, we are making some progress, but we're not doing it fast enough, and it's really impacting people's lives. So I go to this event every year that's put on by this organization called Slow Down Sacramento, and they do a vigil for all the people who lost their lives that year, and they read their names. And it's really grounding that we're not doing enough and we're not doing it fast enough. But I got my votes in committee, but now I'm fighting to make sure that policy can make it back to the council, because there's concerns from staff and there's some questions about legality and all that. So it takes a lot of work, even when you have the political support, to actually get something over the finish line. So, I had that passed in committee November of last year, or of the year before. It still hasn't come to council. So I have to fight to even get it to come. So that's just one example of, I'm still working, I'm not going to give up, but it's hard.
Well, I believe the last time we spoke, the budget situation you just brought up, it's structural, that there has to be a structural change to how spending is, how funds are aggregated and how they're spent. You have a new city manager. Paint me an optimistic picture of the future, given those realities.
Well, yeah, our budget situation is tense. I will say this, though, we're not the only city. This is actually, most cities in California are going through what we're going through. And the state is going through what we're going through right now. So we're seeing budget deficits across the board. And when we say structural, sometimes what people hear is, you guys are doing something wrong. Your spending is out of control, and you're not the reality is that tax revenues fluctuate, and we don't control that. So all we can do is try to predict them every year and then predict our spending. And sometimes you're wrong. So when the economy goes down, let's say when there's new tariffs and people are spending less, let's say that people are feeling less optimistic about their economic situation, and they're like, I'm going to buy the store brand instead of the, Kellogg's, or I'm going to make all these different choices in my spending because I'm feeling the strain. Well, that impacts local government budgets as well. And you can't always predict that. And so what's happened in the last few years is we've seen a decrease in our tax revenues. And that means that we've got our spending, right? We said, hey, we're going to allocate this much towards affordable housing and this much towards homelessness and this much towards public safety. And now we're like, we have to figure out where we're going to cut from to make sure that we're matched, because we are required by state law to balance our budget every year. And so that's what we have to do. And so that's the challenge that we're in. There's also other factors. One is, and these are some of the same factors that families and individuals experience, insurance rates. You probably experience your insurance going up, right? Whether it's your car insurance or your health insurance or your home insurance.
All of the above.
Right, me too. Yeah, so is the city. So our insurance rates have skyrocketed, but we have to have it. We have to have insurance for our employees. We have to have insurance for our facilities. And that means that we're spending more and more money on the same thing, a finite thing, out of our budget. That money's got to come from somewhere. That means it's coming from other things, and we have to figure out how to balance that. The other thing is pension liabilities. It's a huge thing at the state. It's also a huge thing locally. It's a good thing. We want to take care of our workers. We want to make sure that they're paid a living wage and that they have benefits and retirement, but it also is a cost that can fluctuate and especially go up, that we have to figure out where we're going to cut that from. The last thing is our employee budget negotiations or contract negotiations. Every year we go in, it's like a cycle. We're almost always in contract negotiations with the 11 unions that represent our city workers, and we want to make sure they're taken care of because they are also experiencing the pain of the economy and the cost of living and inflation and all of that. And so we want to make sure that their wages can compensate for that, but that means that that money's got to come from somewhere. So those are the realities of the budget. I put into detail on purpose because I want to be clear to the public that, it's not just us willy-nilly spending things on that we, I want a fancy thing over here. I like this cool program. It's really these other costs that I think people can relate to, but it means that we have to make hard choices. Those hard choices mean, are we cutting from public safety? Are we cutting from parks? Are we going to have less money for speed bumps or whatever that may be? Those are the choices. But I also think the rosy picture is there's two ways that you can go about it. And you can do both at the same time. There's the cuts we're going to have to do, but also how do you grow the pie? How do you invest in economic development? That's our number one priority as a city. We just said this back in the end of last year. How do we make it easier for small businesses to open their doors and employ people and grow? How do we invest in projects like Aggie Square and the rail yards so that we're enticing bigger companies to come to Sacramento and employ people? If we can grow our pie, that means we're growing the revenues that come into the city and hopefully addressing the budget deficit over time.
How much of the, I want to bounce back to that in a second, but how much of the budget, big scale, again, I'd hold you to detail, is actually within your control to reduce? Is it?
A lot of it. We have a lot of discretionary spending. We actually have a little different of a situation than the county, which has a lot of very restricted funds. They get money in that goes to social programs or mental health or whatever it may be, and they're required to spend it on those things. A lot of our budget is actually pretty discretionary. There's some things that are not. Now we have Measure L, the Children's Fund. So that's 40% of our cannabis tax revenues must go to youth programs. Okay. It's a great thing. I supported it, but it's restrictive. That money goes in this bucket and you cannot use it for anything else. So it kind of
can't fill potholes with that.
Reduces what we can do with it, right? Yeah. You have Measure U, which I think a lot of people thought was going to go to specific things, but is actually a general tax. So that is discretionary in nature. And what's really interesting, and I don't know a lot of people know this, more than 90% of our budget goes to people, salaries. The city employs people to do things, to provide services.
90%.
Or more. I don't have the exact percentage, but it's a lot. So police officers, firefighters, the people picking up your trash, people who are maintaining the parks and your roadways and fixing lights and janitors, and all of those people are working. The people who are on the 311 center and answer your phone call when you've got an issue, people working at the animal shelter.
So essentially, to change that fundamentally, and 90% is salaries and wages, is to then cut the number of employees.
Could be the case. We've been in a deficit since I came into office. So it hasn't been super fun for me, but I also think it's important that we have consistent leadership during this time that's challenging. But yes, we've been fortunately able to avoid layoffs in the last 3 years. And that has required us getting very creative and finding one-time pots of money, or we can cut here, we can cut this program, because we really valued our workers.
But not kicking the can down the road.
Well, it's hard to say because, again, it's based on the economy too, and it's based on our tax revenues. So we can only project out so much. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, I don't think this is going to be the case, but that this last year we actually did way better than we thought, and the economy went booming and people spent a bunch of money. We could actually be in a situation in the next year or two where we're not in a deficit anymore, where people's jobs are not at risk. But it's completely dependent on what's happening that are kind of outside of our control. I don't think that's going to be the case, and we're going to have to deal with it. It's 1 year at a time for that reason. I also support trying to move towards multi-year budgeting, because I think that gives us more stability, and our workers and everyone else more stability, at least for 2 or 3 years at a time. But it's going to be hard for us to do that because we need to make big changes. Anyway. My goal is always to try to protect jobs. Are we going to be able to do that in the next year or two? I don't know. I really don't know. We're going to find that out when we haven't gotten our budget numbers yet from the staff. That's going to happen in the next month or so. And we're going to start I'm on the budget and audit committee, so we'll have those conversations, but these are the hard conversations that we're going to need to have.
And the fiscal year ends June 30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
On your website, you list your buckets of priority, or your bullets of priority: transportation, housing, small business, community investment. And you were speaking earlier about growing opportunity by enticing, doing the rail yards, Aggie Square, getting businesses here. They add to the taxable base and all that good stuff. So paint me a picture. What does that look like?
Yeah, I can give you a really tangible example.
Okay.
Just last week, I met with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, or GSEC. So they're the multi-county region economic development organization where they're pitching big companies. They're saying, hey, come to Sacramento. We want you to invest in this community. They've gotten, companies come like Bosch to go to Roseville. They've gotten, it's not just us in Sacramento, but it's our region.
Okay.
So I just met with them at Aggie Square last week, and we pitched a Fortune 100 company. And we said, we really would like you to come to Aggie Square. And that could mean hundreds of jobs, really good paying jobs, investments in the local community, because this company really cares about social and corporate responsibility. And workforce training. They said, hey, we want to partner with your community colleges, and we want to train up young people to come work at our company, and we want to start that, invest in that pipeline.
Very nice.
That's a real tangible thing that, me as a council member, the mayor was there too, that we do. When we say economic development, that's what it means in part, is it's not just the jobs and the companies, but what's the pipeline look like? And I know you care a lot about that too. Like, how are we going to make sure that young kids from Oak Park can get training and they can work for, a STEM or tech company, or a another like IT company, something like that, and get the skills that they need without going to debt, going to a four-year university. I think there's a lot of different pathways to do that. Another example mentioned was rail yards, right? You've got the largest infill development project west of the Mississippi in Sacramento. You've got vacant land that used to have, an old train depot on it. It was the terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad, very cool and historic. But that means that they dumped a lot of chemicals and oil and other stuff that's in the ground. And, most development companies are like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole because it's going to cost me so much money to clean it up to even get it to a place where I can build something.
Correct.
And we've registered as a historic landmark, as it should be. But what that means is that it's going to cost even more money to build a building, because you can't just tear it down. You have to keep its integrity as a historic building. But guess what? We made the right partnerships and the right deals with the right developers that they're going to do that there. That's incredible. That's going to be an amazing asset to our region, to our city. It's going to mean a lot more jobs. It's going to be more housing. We're building up the train station there. Imagine like better transportation options. That whole area is going to really transform the downtown in the next decade. Those are investments that we're making now that will mean, hopefully, transformation in the years to come, and all of that leads back to our budget. Hopefully, you've got those big companies, you've got more money coming in tax revenue, and then that means we can provide more things to the public. Better transportation, better public safety, all of that.
Well, as always the case, when we have great conversation, great guests, which we are blessed to do, we're running out of time. But we've got to deal with the issue that's before us right now, societally, politically, culturally. This past week, just a few days ago, Sacramento passed I believe you'd shared that it's a statement of values on what it means to be a sanctuary city. What does that make that meaningful for me? What does that mean, and what is the real lived out effect or impact of that, given the, dare I say, chaos, all of the goings on from sea to shining sea? It just happens to be Minneapolis's turn to be in the center of the storm, but I'm sure it's a storm coming to a zip code near you.
Yeah. And I think it's not lost on us that we're the capital city of California.
Correct.
And
the bluest of blue states.
The bluest of blue states, and you've got a president that doesn't like our governor so much. And I think that there's a very real fear and risk, and I think it's not unfounded that we might be next. In fact, we are very similar in size. We have a lot of similarities in Minneapolis to Sacramento, and so we as a council recognize that. We have been what's called a sanctuary city since 1985, which is actually before I was born. So, but that means that the council passed a policy that said we do not coordinate or cooperate with federal immigration enforcement in this city. Our law enforcement does not. Our city departments do not. That's the policy on the books and has been for a really long time. And part of the reason for that is that we really value our immigrant communities here. This city is built on immigration, 100%. Built on our immigrant communities that show up to work every day, that make our vibrant, like go down Franklin Boulevard, go to Valley High, go to Oak Park. Like you will see
Stockton Boulevard.
You'll see so many great examples of why immigration makes our city wonderful. And so we value that. Those are our values. So what we did was we reaffirmed that on Tuesday, and we said we're going to make it stronger. Because you can't just have a statement of values and saying, hey, this is what we want to happen. You also have to have really tangible policies that go along with that. And so what's going to come next is we are going to pass a series of policies, one or ordinance changes, one banning any immigration enforcement from city-owned properties, policies related to masks, whether law enforcement wearing masks, not identifying themselves, and more resources going towards immigration defense, legal defense, among other things. And so we're really pushing on the boundaries of what we can do as a city. I want to be clear. I don't want to give anyone the impression that the city of Sacramento is going to be able to completely prevent immigration enforcement, federal law enforcement from coming into the city. We don't have the ability to do that legally. But what we can do is try to protect the citizenry at every opportunity that we can, whether that's not coordinating, not sharing data is another important piece, right? Because a lot of law enforcement agencies will share data with the federal government. We want to make it hard. We don't want them to come in and be able to immediately identify and go round people up, because we're seeing what's happening. It's devastating to communities. I mean, I can't get that picture out of my head of that 5-year-old being put into a vehicle.
Still in Texas somewhere.
Right. I mean, family is being torn apart. It is my personal politics, of course, but I do not agree with it. And I think that we need to fight back against it at every opportunity. And so that's what we're going to do. It may put a target on our back, but that's okay, because it's probably there anyway. Mm-hmm. By nature of who we are, the blue city that we are, the politics that we have, the statements that we've had in place for many, many years. And so I don't think that we're any less at risk. It's better to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. What lessons have you learned? Again, 1,500, 2,000 miles away from Minneapolis, what lessons have what have you seen, and what lessons have you learned that can carry forward to Sacramento?
Yeah, I think the power of using our voices, we are not powerless. I think seeing how citizens have stepped up and protected their neighbors. I mean, there's literally whole networks of people in Minneapolis that are standing up and fighting for their neighbors. If their neighbors can't come outside because they're worried about what might happen to them, they're bringing them food. They have networks of people where they're on signal chats, unencrypted chats, sharing information about where officials, where immigration enforcement is, and helping protect people. That is community coming together and working to protect their neighbors. But also local officials, right? Our voice matters too. Yes, I'm just one city council member, and this is the federal government, but my voice matters, the mayor's voice matters. And when we speak up, I think it makes a difference. Look at what's happening in Minneapolis. You had the president of the United States of America on a phone call with the mayor, backtracking and saying, oh, we're going to start pulling people out and we're going to calm down, because he felt the pressure of all of that, the community voices and the local officials. So we can't stop. We have to raise our voices. It matters. And so I hope that we don't have to be in a situation like that here in Sacramento. I'll pray for that. But if we are, we're not going to shut up.
Have you received or experienced or reached out to Congress, our Congress representatives, our senators, in advance of what could happen?
Yes, we are working very closely with all of our state and our federal representatives. Luckily, our Congresswoman, Doris Matsui, she has been very outspoken, and she has said, we're not standing for this. She's not voting to increase budgets for immigration enforcement. She's fighting back. She's shown up unannounced to go and tour some of the immigration facilities. So she's an ally for us. But we also have to realize that we're outnumbered in Congress in terms of those who hold the viewpoints. And so, you were talking earlier about counting your votes. Unfortunately, we don't have the votes, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to fight back. And so we're going to continue to do that. And who knows, maybe with the midterms, I think there's a lot of fear and frustration about the policies. I think we may see that there are more people that get elected to Congress, and that tide may shift.
It's going to be interesting times between now and November. What's the date in November? The
4th?
First Tuesday in November? No, whatever the first Tuesday in November is.
I should probably know this.
Yeah, it would help.
I know it's June 2nd for the primary.
Okay, June 2nd, and then in November. There's got to be a lot. This is not rocket science. I'm not, I'm not giving you the 6 numbers for the lottery. There's going to be a lot happening between now and then. A lot. So what are you doing to prepare yourself, both as council member, but also as Caity Maple person? It's going to be an incredible next 10 months.
Well, you and I were having this conversation off camera before, but really finding time to rest is important. That doesn't sound like what people probably want to hear. They want to know that you're working hard and pounding the pavement, which I will be. But you also have to make time to rest, because I can't be everything all the time. If I don't plug in every once in a while, then I just get burnt out. And so just really, really doing that. Because I think the other thing is, I'm a human being too. I'm elected, but I'm also human, which means I'm watching TV. I'm seeing what's going on. I'm frustrated. I'm sad. I am sometimes overwhelmed by what I see happening nationally, just like a lot of my neighbors and community members are. And that is real. And, and you have to sit in that sometimes and feel it. And then you go, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, what do I have control over? So that's the space that I'm in, trying to make time to feel those emotions, but also then move towards action. And then, like always, I'm going to do exactly what I did last time when I ran in 2021 and 2022 is I'm going to knock on doors. I'm going to hit the ground, make sure I'm connected to the communities that I represent, because I don't think I can do a good job in this position unless I really understand what people are feeling, what they're caring about, what their frustrations are. And you can't know that on the internet. Mm-hmm. You can't know that, going to a meeting here and there. You know that by meeting people at their doors, because a lot of people are not connected to, community groups. They're not going to the neighborhood association meetings. They're not on my newsletter. They're not on the Facebook group. They're at home and they're working 2 jobs and they're taking care of their families. 100%. And so they need to hear from me and I need to meet them where they are. So that's what I'm going to do.
Councilmember Caity Maple, thank you so much for 3 wonderful years. Look forward to your reelection. Look forward to another 4 years. Do take care of yourself, and thank you for entering into this space.
Thank you so much.
You.
Good to see you.
Always.